Hello to everyone who may or may not be here. Welcome back to the stream where we play non-violent games, games that reward the player for intellectual and or emotional engagement rather than for combat or any other kind of violent accomplishments. We are back with the Great Ace Attorney 2 this week after a few weeks off due to a lack of energy for one reason or another. Where did I... So yes, I am sorry that I am a little bit late. I was refreshing myself on some voices and such like that. Hold on. Sorry, my, What is up here? This is odd. Sorry, trying to deal with my, one of my, cameras is acting up a little bit, it seems. Huh. This is odd. Come on. Work for me. What is wrong with you? Come on. Hey, Len. What's up is one of my camera... There we go. There we go. Camera's now working. So... Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I was refreshing myself on some of the voices because it's been a while for a few of these. Alright. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. Hold on, I'm just gonna... All that to... Let's see. Sorry, things just seem to be a little bit slow. But it's all good. So are you winning this case? I don't know. We basically just started it, and it's been a few weeks since I did this, so we haven't really gotten into the meat of it yet. Okay. Chief Inspector Satoru Hosonaga, Imperial Police Bureau. I'm in disguise, obviously, so I can go undetected. And I am, well, the next big thing in books. An author renowned throughout the capital, in fact, yes. Was that it? No, hold on. I have his voice. Hold on. I have a voice for him. Hold on. Yes. They started shouting it. Ah, here we go. And I am, well, the next big thing in books. An author renowned throughout the capital, yes. Soon to be sold out, the satirical I Am Cat, a sensational success by Soseki Natsume. Okay. Sorry. Little distracted. Got a notification here, just getting rid of it. There we go. Alright. Oh my goodness! Struggling student from the provinces, please! You needn't be an out of me. Wait. Struggling student from the provinces, please! You needn't be an out of me. In all of me. Struggling student from the provinces, please. You needed to be in awe of me. Yes, it was a thin slip. You needn't be in awe of me. I needn't? It's only natural that you'd feel nervous in my presence. But all of you, please relax. Call me Soseki, even. Yes. What on earth is Soseki-san doing here? Tread carefully, Susato. Hold on. Let's see. So many voices now. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Alright, good. Okay. Tread carefully, Susato. That author fellow knows you from your time in London, doesn't he? That's author fellow. No. Yeah. It doesn't. That author fellow knows you from your time in London, doesn't he? If he exposes you for who you really are, this will be over before it's begun. Yes, yes, of course. I know. I presume Soseki-san won't have forgotten about me. I could certainly never forget him. Although he does seem to have changed somewhat in the 6 months or so it's been since I last saw him. And as for Inspector Hosonaga, that amazing outfit is hard to believe. Do I have something on my face? Well, your glasses for one, although they don't seem to be helping you see. Thank goodness he hasn't recognized me either. Ah, I suppose it's this disguise, is it? I thought that appearing here in the clothes I was wearing at the time would make for a more faithful testimony. It is my guiding principle to carry out all testimonies flawlessly.
Well, I can appreciate why an Imperial Police Bureau detective might have been present. But what business did a writer such as yourself have being at the scene, Soseki-san? Soseki-san.
It's...
But what business did a writer such as yourself have being at the scene, Soseki-san? Ah, well, you see, I had been asked that day to give a lecture on the morning of the incident in the Imperial Yume University's Grand Lecture Hall, no less.
At Yume University? Oh wait, no. She's gonna be using her Ryotaro voice. At Yume University?
After the lecture, I had a very pleasant conversation with a researcher from the Medical Science Department. The professor over there, in fact.
With Professor Mikoptoba.
Yes, that's right. It was arranged by one of the newspapers. They wanted some story or other about two former students who'd studied in Great Britain. Of course, being a renowned author, the press never leave me alone. They secretly spy, snap shots, scribble stories, and scupper my privacy.
Thanks, Len. I appreciate it. I put a lot of work into this.
As you can see, the conversation was written up in this newspaper here. Read it at your leisure, my provincial struggling student friend. I have plenty of copies.
Thank you very much. He practically threw that paper at me. Soseki Natsume article has been entered into the court record.
Anyway, following my interview with the professor, the lady in question appeared and made a very unexpected announcement. I should like to go with everyone to see your country's coast. Those were her words.
As I explained before, Miss Brett was never taken into custody. She continued to work in my laboratory, under strict surveillance, of course.
At which utterance, the university immediately contacted the government to seek guidance. And the response was, permit Miss Brett to go as long as a detective accompanies her.
That detective, I am at liberty to divulge, was me, Chief Inspector Satoru Osanoga.
Thereby, the entire party departed cordially for the seaside, it seems.
It was extremely challenging to clear all other members of the public from the vicinity of the beach. But fortunately, I am at peak physical fitness at the moment, so I was able to carry out my duty flawlessly. Oh my. Inspector, you do have something on your face now. Hold on. No, that's not. Sorry. A lot of... Well, you do have something on your face now. Ah, how unsightly. I do apologize. Does that mean that you went... Does that mean that you went to the beach too, Father?
No. Fortunately, I had work to finish off. But unfortunately, of course, it meant that as my assistant, Ray, was invited to take my place. Of course, being a renowned author, I didn't like to decline the invitation. But if only I had, I'd have never seen that awful sight, relentlessly racked by remorse and regret. Very well. I must now ask you to present your formal testimony to the court. You will give an account of all that you witnessed on your impromptu excursion to the coast.
Of course, Your Excellency.
Relentlessly racked by remorse and regret I am.
The witness scene. On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance assignment in this disguise.
I just managed to catch that crab when I suddenly heard a caterwaul from behind me.
I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question.
Yes, that young girl was astride the Englishwoman, dagger in hand, as she stabbed wildly.
I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she'd stabbed the victim multiple times.
Indeed. It does appear from this testimony that both witnesses here present saw it, the very moment of this heinous crime.
What?
Now, if you will recall, I promised evidence as well. What phrase did I use again? Ah, yes, that was it. Damning evidence.
What have you there, Counsel? A so-called fountain pen, is it? Correct, Your Excellency. I found it at the scene whilst examining the body. It appears that in her dying moments, with her final ounce of strength, the victim clutched a piece of evidence that would positively identify her killer. What?
Your Excellency, if you would cast your eyes over the photographic print of the crime scene once more.
Ah! Oh, goodness me!
Yes, the victim is clearly grasping something quite deliberately there in her hand.
That's right, the fountain pen. And if you would kindly examine the pen, Your Excellency.
Ah! The owner's initials have been graved into the ebonite barrel. R.M.
Ray Membami,
the initials of the defendant.
Ah, no!
I'm sorry for being mean, but holy shit, that hairstyle. Which one? This fountain pen will be admitted immediately as critical evidence.
Fountain pen is in it.
So, have I omitted anything? Ouchies, I mean. Oh yeah, well... It's kind of a running gag throughout the series. So him and his descendants, which are in the mainline games, they have some kind of, hair that they think looks fantastic, and then they lose that hair at the end of the trial when you beat them. Because there are all these fantastic breakdowns, and anyways, so the thing is that basically he's very proud of the fact that that he has this little piece of hair growing back on the front of his head. He's very proud of that fact. Sorry, the upper camera froze again. So that little tuft of hair on his forehead there is him growing it back from when he lost it all at the end of the trial in the first game. There we go. So have I omitted anything? Decisive testimony and damning evidence. There's a bright blue sky outside the courthouse today. Perfect weather to ascribe guilt, I feel.
I don't understand. The prosecutor outed you 9 months ago. Had none of this man's poise.
Counsel for the defense, you may begin your cross-examination now. Naruto-san.
Naruhodo. That means... Oh, yes! Me.
Is there another Naruto in my courtroom?
Actually, there isn't even a single Naruto in your courtroom.
Cousin Ryotaro, pull yourself together, please.
Alright, I've seen this countless times as a judicial assistant. Find inconsistencies in the witnesses' testimonies to prove that they're lying somehow. That's all there is to it. That's how a real lawyer would handle a cross-examination. So let's see what I can do.
Let's see.
In that jaunty disguise. Correct. Wait, no! I mean, it wasn't the first time I've worn this swimsuit for a dip in the ocean. It's tried and tested. I mean, it wasn't the first time I've worn the swimsuit for a dip in the ocean. It's tried and tested. Do what must be done to keep the Englishwoman under surveillance. Those were my orders that day. And this tried and tested outfit was the answer. Being able to blend flawlessly into a crowd is an important part of a detective's job. I submerged myself in the salty water, leaving only Mr. Turtle floating inconspicuously on the surface. Mr. Turtle loves the water. But there was no need for you to blend into the background on this assignment, really, was there?
If that made you late arriving on the scene, I think perhaps you had your priorities wrong.
Perhaps I shouldn't pursue this line of questioning any further at the moment. Ah, you're describing the victim's scream, presumably, Soseki-san. Ah, you're describing the victim's scream, presumably, Soseki-san. Ah, so, hold on. So, this is Susate's voice? Ah, you're describing the victim's scream, presumably, Susate-san. Soseki-san.
In more literary terms, you might say it was a scream that could have pierced the heavens. Ka! Or the like. Of course, that's just a metaphor. We renowned authors are wont to describing things so.
Soseki-san wasn't at all like this in England.
Anyway, I spun around at the noise and the beach hut immediately fell under my gaze.
Yes, the beach hut. The area is popular with government ministers. Many have seaside retreats there for rest and recuperation. Locals are prohibited from entering the area, so it's always very quiet. The beach hut is a simple structure, erected as a place for people to change or take refuge from the sun.
Although, the Englishwoman commandeered the hut for herself, which meant that I was forced to change into my swimwear on the sand.
Ah, I imagine that was rather embarrassing for you.
Well, anyway, I tossed the crab aside and headed for the beach hut to run. Or, in more literary terms, I decrabbed and beetled off hutwise. I don't think any writer worth their salt would have phrased it that way.
Wait, by pair? You don't mean to say... But how could that be? No. You misunderstand. Obviously, I mean the victim and the defendant, Rei Mamami-san. Oh, it would have been helpful if you could have just said that from the outset. If you jump to conclusions, you have to expect to fall flat on your face sometimes.
Dear me, pinning your hopes on such an outside chance. Foolish. Very foolish.
It really was an outside chance. I just wish I'd realized that before I said something silly.
So, Inspector, why don't you tell the court how exactly you found the aforementioned bear in the hut?
Well, it was a sorry sight. A really grisly scene. I parted the Norn curtain hanging in the doorway, and stepped inside only to see the defendant leaning menacingly over the lifeless body of the victim sprawled on the sand. My glasses very nearly cracked at the ominous sight that met my eyes.
How thoroughly appalling!
He doesn't appear to be lying here. Well, Soseki-san, can you confirm what the Inspector Hosonoga is saying, I wonder?
Ah, you'd like a literary man's opinion.
Stabbed wildly? You actually saw her do it?
Oh, indeed! The terrible spectre, the terrapin inspector, the bloody torrent, the author's torment!
Eek!
Eek! Or whatever. Eek! Every sight and every sound is still carved into my melancholy memory. That was my impression, at least, as a future literary sensation. Counsel, what on earth was that shrill, effeminate scream?
Oh, no,
What are you insinuating? I am as manly a Japanese man as you!
I wonder if I might interject here, Soseki-san. Something you said is troubling me. That was my impression, were your words just now, I believe. Huh, so, do you mean to say you're not confident that you really did see what you've described?
No, I mean, yes. No, I know what I saw. My eyes didn't deceive me when I heard that scream, hence my eyes didn't deceive me either. I could describe everything I saw vividly. I could publish it all in tomorrow's newspaper serial. It sounds as though the next installment of I Am a Cat may take a macabre turn.
I think this is a fool's errand. The more we press your author friend on what he saw, the more entrenched he's going to become. Oh dear, how awkward. She was stabbed multiple times. How can you be sure of that? Very simply, from the blood on the blade. The blood? When I entered the hut, I saw the defendant holding the blade raised up in the air.
Yes, that's right. I saw it too.
Oh.
And I noted that there was blood on the blade already at that point.
In other words, the victim had already been stabbed at least once by the time I arrived on the scene.
Yes, that's right. I saw it too.
And the victim was already holding the defendant's fountain pen in her hand, too. All of which means I can be sure the victim did not die instantly.
Yes, right. Saw it too.
Maybe a year in London was too much for him. He sounds like he's forgotten how to speak Japanese.
The logic of your argument is sound, at least.
Well, as I said, it is my guiding principle to carry out all testimonies flawlessly. Perhaps it should have been your guiding principle to protect the victim flawlessly. That's just my personal opinion, of course.
Counsel, you will refrain from mocking the witness.
Oh no, I just have so many thoughts whirling around in my head. It's all I could do to stand here, wide-eyed and mute.
Goodness, my dear, you really must try to calm down.
But how am I supposed to find an inconsistency in what these two gentlemen are saying? I don't see why either of them would have any reason to lie.
What you must remember, I think, is that witnesses may inadvertently lie at times, for various reasons. A misunderstanding, a mistaken observation, a delusion even.
Ah, a delusion.
What's important is that we determine the truth, and there's only one sure way to do that.
Yes, with evidence, of course.
Spoken like a true judicial assistant. During witness testimony, you can use art to pick a piece of evidence to present for consideration. So you need to listen carefully to each statement and compare what's said to the details in the court record. If you find some conflicting information, that might be the inconsistency you're looking for.
Yes, it's all about inconsistencies.
Once you've identified a witness's statement that appears to conflict with a piece of evidence, present the evidence to the witness with X, and the way ahead will present itself to you, I'm sure.
Yes. All right then. I'll consider the details of all the evidence in the court record against each statement to find an inconsistency. I hope I'm up to the task.
Don't forget that you can have the witnesses repeat their statements as many times as you like. Everyone has to start at the beginning, remember, so those wide eyes are quite forgivable, sorry. And besides, there's no one else to defend the poor girl.
You're right. I need to listen to the testimony again from the start. So you like the voices, Len? You think they're distinct enough? Damn it! The upper webcam froze again. Wonder why that keeps happening. Also, do you think they fit the personalities and the designs? I'm really trying hard to be able to do that for every single character. I got him. I'm glad to hear it.
Objection.
My favorite voice so far is the one from Hosonaga. Oh? Why's that? I tried to give him like a really smooth voice. It felt sort of in character with his, you know, his whole thing of like, I present flawless testimony and stuff like that. It felt like that would be sort of, he would be sort of generally calm, you know? Most of the time anyway, you know? Or at least try to present that way. With that accusatory cry that just welled up from deep inside me, I think I finally understand. Every time Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san have stood here at this bench, the stakes have been very, very high indeed.
What's the meaning of that menacing pose, counsel?
I'd like the witness to clarify something for me.
Who? What? Where? When? How?
Not you, Soseki-san. This query is directed at Inspector Hosonaga. At me. In your statement just now, you said that the victim was stabbed multiple times. Yes, that's right. As I said when I entered the hut. Ashira, hi Ashira! Welcome! Oh, by the way, I forgot there's a couple folks who followed me recently that I want to thank them. Friend of mine, Emperor Crow X, and also a fantastic YouTuber has followed Pillar of Garbage, who I highly recommend checking out his channel. He does great video essays. Oh, sorry. Actually, for a second I didn't realize that, Ashira, you were the one who said that. I just sort of flipped over and I thought it was Len. But hi, Ashira. Welcome. Is Ashira what you wish to be called? Oh, hi. I can't stay for long. It's almost midnight. It's all good, Ashira. Thank you for stopping by. Yes, that's right. As I said when I entered the hut, the defendant was already standing over the victim, bloody knife in hand, like a murderous demon. And yet, that cannot be. What? Get to the point, please, counsel. In the post-mortem report, it clearly states that the victim was stabbed one time only. Ah! In other words, Inspector Hosenauger's testimony is clearly flawed. Ah! And Soseki-san. Me? You claim to have seen Membami-san in the throes of stabbing the victim. Yes, I did. Wildly. But both you and the inspector confirm the same point, that there was already blood on the knife you saw the defendant holding. Yes, and? It's quite simple. We know the murder weapon was used to stab the victim only once. No worries, Len. See you next time. It's quite simple. We know the murder weapon was used to stab the victim only once. Therefore, there is no way there could have been blood on the knife if that single stabbing hadn't already occurred. Ah, true! Then what exactly is your contention, Counsel? Are you ever going to tell us? Yes, Your Excellency, there's only one logical conclusion. What Soseki-san in fact saw was not the moment the defendant stabbed the victim at all, but the moment the defendant in fact withdrew the blade from the victim's body. That can't be! Excellent work, Susoto. You exploded at them with that objection and then proceeded to pull them apart systematically. Well, this takes me back. Yes, I seem to remember your cousin staged a scene much like this in that trial 9 months ago. A half-witted child with a half-baked objection attempting to steal the show. You're right. There were certain similarities. Except that so-called half-witted child managed to outwit the prosecution, who has only half a head of hair. Slander! My head is quite adequately dressed. In any case, all this talk of stabbing and withdrawing and multiple wounds, it makes not a jot of difference. What? Why not? Engage your brain, young man. When the accused first plunged the deadly weapon into the victim, that was the fatal blow. And it was that moment, just as she had withdrawn the blade ready for her next strike, that the witnesses saw. The knife was already tainted with blood because the accused had already stabbed the victim. Ha! All you have successfully shown with your little display is that the mustache author is prone to moments of extravagance. Ah! I am in agreement with the prosecution. If the defendant was seen wielding the blade at all, that is sufficient grounds for her actions to be viewed with suspicion. But if she was withdrawing the blade? Then we are back to where we started. Sorry. Consider this, young yokel boy.
If the student girl is as innocent as you claim, then why would she have pulled the blade from the victim, and with a demon's cold-blooded composure, too? The prosecution demands an explanation, and it had better be good.
Why did Ray pull out the knife?
Ah, yes. Going for the jugular.
What does father mean by that?
Let the court hear your answer then, counsel.
The truth is, I don't really know. But I have to come up with a plausible reason here, or we don't have a case.
Okay, have a lovely sleep and night and whatever, Ashira.
The reason why the victim pulled a knife blade out of the victim's body was surely so she could... According to the post-mortem report, the victim's death was not instant. That's correct. It's thought she would have remained unconscious for a short while after sustaining the injury.
Indeed, giving her the time to take hold of this piece of evidence that clearly indicates her killer.
The point is, being a medical research assistant, Mbami-san was compelled to act when faced with the wounded victim. Instinctively, she pulled the blade out in an attempt to save Miss Brett's life.
Do you hear that, Your Excellency? It would seem this is the best we can expect of this young yokel. Indeed.
Is it just me, or does it suddenly feel much colder in here? Your Excellency, if I may.
Speak, witness.
I would like another opportunity to testify, in respect to the slipshod assertion just put forward by the Yokel Defense Council, I mean. Slipshod?
An excellent idea, Inspector. A young yokel hopeful has a modicum of knowledge when it comes to law, it seems. But in matters of medicine, he appears to possess not one iota of common sense. Very well, Inspector. I permit your request. You will testify again before the court on the subject of the Defense Counsel's assertion.
Yes, sir. I will do so flawlessly. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yes. Think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excessive blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper shouldn't be removed. Oh, I see.
This is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. Anyone who's ever given someone a little poke with a knife and pulled it out again knows it.
Well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see, or pulled a blade out of a wound, so...
Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit.
Father, is it true what they're telling me?
Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge for medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance of such fundamentals, that would prove fatal in many ways.
But then, why would Ray have done it?
Could she have pulled out that knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal for Miss Brett? I don't know. Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe, but could my friend actually have... Susato. Yes? Pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here. Huh. Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination. Oh, yes, Your Excellency. However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I will be moving to my adjudication immediately afterwards. I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause until the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but I had no idea it would be this hard. You say doing so without thinking could be a problem. Does that mean if you use due care and attention it would be alright? I wouldn't have thought this needed spelling out, really, but the blade is like a stopper in the wound. Remove it and a serious hemorrhage will occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it. Oh, well, thank you for such a thorough explanation. You see, Counsel, when you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath. Back to the witness testimony, please. Back to the witness testimony, please. Please. Whatever. Anyways. In that case, there's an obvious explanation here. Which is... Clearly, the defendant Ray Oh my god! Susato, why? 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 Why would you say that? Why? Why? Clearly, the defendant, Raymond Bami-san, does not possess an ounce of sense. What do you think about that, Professor Mikotoba? I'm not sure you should be labeling your best friend as lacking in common sense. Well, I thought it would be better than labeling her as a murderer. I don't know young people today. If that's friendship, I don't understand it. Careful, Counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing. Oh dear, that recoiled on me rather badly. That's life, I'm afraid. A lesson everyone must learn. Hopefully you can see now that this is really basic medical knowledge. Being involved in medical research, Membami-san would certainly have been aware of it. But the defendant had suddenly encountered somebody she knew lying on the ground, bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her delicate sensibilities, causing her to remove the blade inadvertently. I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so irrationally. Oh, but irrational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it? Oh my god, Susato! Oh dear. You have a lot to learn about women. Only a small-minded man could have such bigoted views. Oh dear. Perhaps I'm letting my male persona take hold a little too much. Well, have I managed to convey the basics now? That should cover the medical side of the argument. Whatever the motive, it just isn't in Membami-san's nature to do something so awful. But she had both motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against. But you don't know the defendant. And your counsel do not appear to know the law.
Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the court of your argument, not feelings.
With this fledgling to defend, I would almost say I pity the accused.
So do I.
Inspector, you will reiterate your point about the defendant's motive, please.
Ah, yes. Miss Brett was in many ways the sworn enemy of Membami-san. Well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Membami-san's talent and offered her the position of assistant despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him. Yes, the Englishman appears to have been a very broad-minded individual.
Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions.
He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Membami-san's abilities. Clearly, the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point. This is hopeless. I can't find a single crack in his testimony anywhere. If Ray knew that withdrawing the knife from the wound would threaten Miss Brett's life further, I just can't think of any way to explain why she did it.
Susato, it is at times like these when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals.
The fundamentals?
Evidence is what counts in the courtroom, isn't it?
Of course, but I've been through the court record dozens of times already.
I think perhaps you're forgetting something, though. You needn't take the evidence at face value. You can and must examine it in greater detail, too.
Huh.
I realize this is your first time playing the role of lawyer in the courtroom, so if you need reminding of the rudiments, you need only ask. I'll do my very best to help.
Examine the evidence in the court record. It's an idea, certainly. What should I do? I know what to do. Come to think of it, Kazuma-san and Naruhodo-san were always turning evidence over and over in their hands. Yes, I need to examine things in greater detail with A.
Ah, by look in your eyes, I see it's coming back to you. Go through the court record again and have a thorough look at everything. You may just find a clue.
Yes, I'll do it straight away. If we take off the pen's lid, now let's unscrew the barrels, shall we? This must be the little reservoir that holds the ink.
Yes, you fill it by drawing ink from a bottle up through the nib.
Is something wrong, Father?
Just that there doesn't appear to actually be any ink in there, that's all.
Oh yes, you're right. It's pretty much empty. Well, it could be on the verge of running out, I suppose. The RM initials are very clearly engraved here, and the fact that Miss Brett was clinging to this pen in her dying moments is clearly a message too. To identify...
is clearly a message too.
To identify her killer, you mean?
I don't think there can be any doubt that this is a key piece of evidence in this case.
There's some sort of emblem here, look. But it isn't a Yume University one.
It must belong to some other organization, I suppose. A business of some kind. But that would seem to imply the pen doesn't in fact belong to Ray. Let's see. Ah, yes, okay. So.
Ruckus England returnees tell all. This is the interview with you and Saseki-san, is it, father? It looks as though it was quite an exchange.
Yes, he became a little over-animated when he was talking about his time in England. The photographer managed to capture the moment his hand karate chopped me on the neck.
I do hope you weren't hurt. This is a newspaper from Saseki-san. There seems to be an important article on the back page as well. Exclusive, deadly poison stolen from Yume University... from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. From Yume's Medical Research? Father, isn't that your lab?
What the... Let me see that. The poison's been stolen.
It's this morning's paper that Saseki-san gave us. Are you saying you didn't know?
As embarrassing as that is for the head of the laboratory, I didn't. I've not heard any such thing. Where on earth could the reporter have gleaned this information?
Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there?
It's a highly toxic poison we've been working on in the strictest confidence. I put Ray in charge of the project.
Ray? She was managing it.
If what's written here is true, it means that she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow.
I don't believe it.
We need to read this article very carefully. Let's see. Nope. Here we go. 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 Alright, following a lecture at Yume by Saseki Natsume on 11th of August, it's come to light that a very disturbing incident took place. A deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensic science laboratory was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, would prove fatal in minutes. Current methods cannot detect the newly developed chemical. The university would have to be consulted. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, starting with impaired breathing and ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. Such symptoms would be suggestive of this toxin. It's apparently an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids, and rumored to have been commissioned by the military. Of course, the military.
No, there is one possibility. One very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound.
What? Ha! The eagle not only has a poor grasp of the law, but is also a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you've identified?
It's here, in this newspaper article. An article about a deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at Imperial Yume Unit.
The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance in this case.
But...
Prosecutor Ouchie, you will let the defense speak. But her newspaper article, the court cannot rely on the kind of hearsay those wretched publications carry. Counsel for the defense. I am going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article you had mentioned affirms your assertion. Your Excellency!
Yes, of course. Thank you. Ray would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife from the victim's body is explained in the article where it says... deadly in tiny quantities. The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death in minutes. Are you suggesting, if the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, It would explain why the defendant, Membari-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible. Yes, the truth is, it was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. What?
This is complete and utter nonsense.
Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the wound's demise, but to save her life, and the prosecution cannot deny the possibility.
Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhage. The word poison appears nowhere in the document.
Well, that's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold.
Oh, please, this is clearly desperation, the weasel's last breaking of wind. Poison has nothing whatsoever to do with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the informant in this wretched newspaper article is all reliable anyway.
In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive. But instead, you claim she suspected poisoning and took the potentially lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense.
Exactly, well put, Inspector. On what grounds did you do it, yokel?
Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds. What?
You can't possibly.
From your expression, counsel, it would appear that those are not empty words. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in our modern justice system. The court demands evidence. Yes, Your Excellency. I'm well aware of that. I've seen it many times, from my place at his side in the Old Bailey.
In that case, counsel, you will present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article? Oh no. Oh no. I messed up.
My father always told me to ask my elders whenever I was in trouble, so I thought I should ask your opinion, Your Excellency.
If it is advice you seek, counsel, then I suggest that before indiscriminately thrusting evidence into my nose, why not thrust it under the nose of the professor at your side?
I think he means you.
Good grief, thrusting that under my nose isn't going to solve anything here. We must use our heads. The article in the paper had details of the toxin. Now, where have we seen similar details? Does nowhere come to mind?
Oh, you mean I ought to search through all the evidence looking for that?
If I'm not mistaken, it appears the advice of your elders has given you an idea.
Yes, I'd like another chance to present evidence if I may, Your Excellency.
In that case,
I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the post-mortem report, which reads, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim. Ah! Clearly, being a yokel with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea, so please do tell me. Presumably the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death?
Well,
under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, yes.
What are you doing, you yokel detective?
In a newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Sorry. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death.
What?
If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had constricted severely.
Yes, as a medical research assistant, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt.
Prosecutor Ouchie, I think you'll agree this is very compelling evidence.
You yokel student and yokel professor! I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions. No! Eugene Mikotoba. Yes, Your Excellency. I believe you are best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in this newspaper, please.
It pains me to have to admit it, but I'm afraid I don't know.
You don't know?
The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft.
Do you mean to tell the court that the reports of this theft are unfounded?
No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say.
Ha! Listen to the bubbling academic. Unaware of the theft of secret state research from his own workplace until he reads it in the newspaper.
I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervision.
Father. A pitiful situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students rather than allowing them off on killing sprees.
That's totally unfounded.
Okay, let's see.
None of this is Professor Mikotoba's fault. It's all my fault. Ray.
Remember me, son. You stand accused here. Outbursts like this will not be tolerated.
But it was me. I was the one who noticed that the poison we were developing had been stolen that day.
What?
So you knew. I'd been placed in charge of overseeing the project. It was the day that the professor and Soseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper. That's when I noticed that some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount it was.
Why didn't you let me know immediately?
I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential, but some of the toxin had somehow been taken. So I decided I'd try to get it back before anyone else found out. Because I had a very good idea of who the thief was. The thief? You don't mean... Yes, of course. It was that dainty Englishwoman.
Miss Giselle Brett.
That's why I decided to join the little group of people who go into the seaside. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brett. But she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable. I know it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then, she suddenly got to her feet, before falling to her knees in front of me and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. I couldn't understand what had just happened. And then, a moment later, I was seized with fear. The pupils of her eyes they'd shrunk to tiny pinpoints.
I don't believe it. In other words, you realized that the victim was suffering the effects of the stolen poison.
My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything past Miss Brett's lips while I'd been with her, which left only one possible way for the poison to have entered her body. On the blade of the knife in her back. On the blade of the knife in her back.
And that train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade.
Yes, if the amount it entered her bloodstream was small enough, she might still have a chance. That's what I hoped. Really, I'm so sorry for staying silent all this time.
Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is not something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you have confessed in the end.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It's barely perceptible, but I do think the balance has shifted a little here in this courtroom now.
Your Excellency, do not be deceived. The victim just collapsed before your eyes, you say? Well, Membami-san, if that is the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss Brett came to be stabbed.
Well,
You have no answer because the simple truth is you stabbed the victim, motivated by revenge.
But you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion, do you?
Oh, I have evidence, and it is very much conclusive.
What's the prosecution counsel up to? It was brief, but he hesitated for a moment there. I'm almost sure of it.
You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, Prosecutor Archie. Perhaps some praise is due, young yokel student.
What?
I had imagined that there would be no need for me to submit this evidence. But you've brought this on yourself.
What the? Could a more damning shot exist? The cruelty in the air on the beach is almost palpable.
This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the accused's murderous nature, for it shows the precise moment that Membami-san plunged her dagger into the victim's back.
No, that's not true, no! I don't believe it. Ah!
Order, order, order. Counsel for the defense, was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my courtroom? Perhaps his voice has yet to break. These yokels are slow of mind and slow to mature.
I'll show you who's slow to mature.
Careful now. Sato is starting to show her face here. It is often said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. The court will accept this extremely cogent photographic print as evidence.
I can't believe he's had a photograph like that up his sleeve the entire time. It's such a stark image, I feel I'm genuinely lost for words. Wait a minute! I don't understand. How did you... I mean, who took that photograph? Ray.
That's of no importance here. Stop trying to divert attention.
Ah. That's an absurd thing to say. It's crucially important. Whoever took this photographic print was a witness to Miss Brett's death. The court must be allowed to hear this person's testimony.
Ah! I will uphold the defense's demand. Prosecution will, the prosecution will reveal the identity of the person responsible for taking this photograph at once. Well, I'm afraid I can't do that.
Pardon?
You'll see, this print arrived at the Imperial Police Bureau headquarters by express post yesterday, but there was nothing to indicate the sender's name or address. The provenance of the print is unknown. Goodness.
Are we to understand then, Counsel, that in full knowledge of the fact this photograph has the murkiest of origins, you nevertheless believe it fit for submission as evidence in the Supreme Court?
When you first produced that print before, I noticed you hesitated for a brief moment. Because you knew that it wasn't completely reliable evidence, didn't you? Silence, you yokel student and blabbering professor! What matters is the blatant truth that this print so elegantly expresses.
But the defendant has already admitted to pulling the blade from the wound. Clearly, this isn't the moment that the knife was plunged into the victim's back, but
the moment it was withdrawn. Don't waste this court's time with your ramblings. Indeed, Without knowledge of who produced this print, we have no means of verifying the claim, and the scene it captures is without doubt the most compelling evidence presented to the court. If the defense is unable to shed any further light on the matter, I believe the conclusion is clear.
Oh no.
Susato, this is the time for you to fight. If what you've established so far is true, then there can be no doubt. This photograph shows the moment that Rick withdrew the blade from the victim.
Yes, we just need to prove that somehow.
Oh, you'll have plenty of time to rue your defeat on the slow train back to the provinces. And to rue the day you came up against Takeuchi Ouchi in a court of law.
If I can't determine who took this photograph, then the trial is going to come to an end. There must be a clue somewhere. There must be some way of working out who took it.
Well, Counsel.
Your Excellency, the burning question is who took that photograph, and the truth is... This isn't about whether I can or can't come up with the answer now. I simply have to. The identity of the person who took this dramatic photographic print is, I assure you, something the defense can and will reveal.
What? No, you can't possibly. But as you so boldly claim that you can, please do enlighten us.
Unfortunately, I'm unable to present a name.
How utterly underwhelming. Do you really believe you could...
However, I am able to present evidence. The defense has a piece of evidence that reveals important details about the photographer's identity.
What?
Very well then,
Counsel. Present your proof to the court. Which piece of evidence do you claim reveals something about the identity of the mystery photographer?
The piece of evidence in question is this.
I'm afraid, Counsel, that when presenting evidence, you must learn to temper those wide, nervous eyes. I'm obliged to penalize you for the lack of focus in both your eyes and your answer. Would you care to squeeze your head in your hands again, Counsel, to punish yourself from presenting such utterly irrelevant evidence?
I'll squeeze my head as many times as it takes to win this trial. Your Excellency, may I?
You may present another piece of evidence, but no more squeezing, Counsel.
Okay, fine. I thought it would be, the article with the... the pen, with the initials, right? But I guess it's not.
What is that? The newspaper again? Ruckus England returnees tell all.
It's not the headline that's relevant here, Your Excellency. It's the photograph. If you look at it closely, you'll notice that there are some white lines on the right-hand side.
Ah, yes, indeed. They had already caught my eye, as it happens.
Ha! What of it? A shadow of some kind, presumably, from the branches of a tree or the like.
There are no trees growing inside my laboratory at the university, I can assure you.
Now, if you look closely at this photograph...
Good gracious.
Yes, exactly the same pattern of lines is present on this photograph too.
Well, that tells us nothing. Ah, yes, it's a shadow of some kind, definitely from the branches of a tree.
There wouldn't be any trees growing inside a hut at the beach, Council.
Ah! What's quite remarkable about it is that the two patterns are absolutely identical. How could such an extraordinary similarity have transpired?
The curious matching pattern that appears on both photographics is a result of a camera defect. Obviously, it must be due to a problem with the camera used to take the photographs.
With the photographic device? Yes, we can confidently say that the camera's lens must be scratched, and that the scratched lens causes unwanted lines to appear on every print taken with the device.
In short, the two photographs under consideration here were taken with the same camera.
But there must be hundreds of such camera devices here in the capital. It would be utterly impossible to identify the owner of this particular one.
I think you're forgetting, Prosecutor Archie, that one of the photographs featured in a newspaper article.
A newspaper? Ah!
That's right. The author of that article is the mystery witness to this crime.
Oh, ah! I don't know what that was. I see why you were called a Rackus England returnee. What are you yelling about? You've already testified.
Menemamu.
It's Menemamu, I tell you. Menemamu. Mo.
Soseki-san, what was that? Did you say Menememo?
Ever since I returned to Japan, a reporter from the Shogun News has been hounding me, following my every move. A reporter by the name of Raiten Menememo. Yes, hounding me from dawn till dusk.
Ah, now that he mentions it.
They secretly spy, snapshot school stories, and scupper my privacy.
Could that same reporter be?
A camera to the left of him, a notebook to the right. There I am stuck in the middle with Raiten Menememo. So you're saying that this picture was taken by Menememo? Yes, my lord, your excellency, Aspire. Officer, find this newspaper reporter at once and bring him to my courtroom. We will adjourn for a short recess in the meantime.
Oh, yes, your excellency.
As you say, your excellency. And one more thing. I want this knife, the murder weapon, examined for traces of poison. You will solicit the assistance of the Imperial University's medical department for the task. Understood. Memo!
Well, I think that's probably a good place to stop. Usually I have, about 20 minutes more than this, but, this is as good a place to stop as any. Right? So... let's see if there's anyone to raid. Da, 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 da. Yeah, da, 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 da.